Welcome to Fortitude at Work, a podcast all about building your mental and emotional strength. Pull up a chair and join in the chat with your hosts, Leanne and John. Let's talk all things that put fortitude to work for you.
Okay, Johnny.
We're back.
We are back. This is pretty exciting, isn't it?
It's been a couple of years.
It has. And we're going to get all posh and fancy and call it season 2.
We are. Season 2 after our hiatus.
Oh.
There we go.
We've been gone a while, though.
We have, yes.
Tell me, what have you been doing? What have you been up to for 4 years?
Well, I haven't been incarcerated, if you're wondering about that.
Bonus.
I think COVID came in and made life difficult for everybody.
Yep.
And we all just concentrated on ourselves, which was probably a good thing.
We did.
Yeah,
we hibernated.
We did. We went into the hole and stayed there for a couple of years like everyone else, which I'm probably the only person in society that really enjoyed that.
You loved it, didn't you?
I did. It was fantastic.
You were very upset when we could go back into the world.
I was, yeah. You said, we can go to a restaurant this week. And I thought, damn. damn it. And was it Uber Eats and DoorDash and Menulog?
I know.
Made a fortune out
They
of me.
loved you, didn't they?
They're going to miss me.
They are going to miss you. But it's nice to be back.
It is.
Yes. And we're recording in a new location.
We are, with Jerry at Films for Change.
I know. So where are we? Film, you just said, sorry.
That's all right. Films for Change. Keep up.
Say it again, John.
Films for Change.
That's right. So, and what have you made me do this season?
I've made you not only come out from behind the mic, but into the camera.
And do I want to do this, John?
You have reservations?
I do have reservations.
What's that all about?
Well, I've got a few COVID kilos on. Mm. Thanks for that.
Yep. And our 7 listeners are judging you as we speak.
Sorry, Mum.
She doesn't listen to this.
She's not watching, so it's okay.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Thanks for putting the camera in my face.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought it might be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks also for asking me what I've been up to the last few years.
Leanne, what's kept you away for the last couple of years?
Thanks for asking, John.
Mm.
Yeah, in the last few years, I've actually, as you do know, I've been completing my PhD.
Yep.
And I'm still completing my PhD. Yep. And I'm really excited to be back doing this, actually, I have to say, because I've found out a lot of things.
Yes.
And you've got a lot to say too, haven't you?
Always.
So I thought this is a great opportunity to share some of those findings.
Yep.
And to talk a bit about small business and coping in small business. But the beauty about that is that I think small business owners are humans.
They are, last time I looked.
Yeah.
And your PhD is all about the mental health or mental fitness, if you like, of people in small business and how to build some resilience in that space, because it can be an incredibly stressful choice to be a small business person at this time in history.
And given that there's over 4 million people that work in small business, we are probably going to be talking to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And because we're talking about human things, you don't have to own a small business to listen to this, do you?
No, it should hopefully help people. We're in the business of helping people.
Yeah.
Actually, we're in the business of helping ourselves with a side effect that some other people might get some value. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so can you tell me a bit, speaking of helping people, because you're doing that quite a bit nowadays, so what are you doing? Do a plug, John, a plug.
JohnDiamondCounselling.com.au. I've put my energy into going back to something that has always kept me grounded over the years. I've been in several small businesses, and I also spent a bit of time in corporate world. But over the last couple of years, for my own sanity, I jumped out of corporate and I've gone back into the helping trades. So I now have a small business of my own, which is to be a counsellor or a therapist for those people on the Central Coast.
Yeah. We don't have to be on the coast. I think you've actually booked sessions with people that are in like Europe, I think, haven't you?
As one, Germany and Singapore.
Yeah.
And Adelaide.
Oh, Adelaide.
I know.
Far away.
That's it. But also around the Central Coast and Sydney. So yes, I have Zoom sessions and telehealth and in person.
Yeah.
So and it seems to be working for me at the moment, and I'm not being all that harmful. So
yeah, I think it's brilliant. And in fact, if we're going to come back to small business, as I'm sure we're going to, one of the things that has come out in my research has been how important it is for small business people to actually connect with someone or to talk to somebody on a regular basis. And so I think there's actually quite a bit of overlap between what you're doing and the research that I'm doing, which is kind of lucky because we live with each other.
Yes, that's true. And as we said, the people in small business are people.
They are.
And it can be a lonely space doing that on your own. So connecting with other people in similar circumstances and talking about what it's like is healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, connecting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's really healthy. So we're going to have a different theme for each of our episodes. And today we talked about this so much because we walk every morning, don't we?
We do, yes. And I do most of the talking.
You do?
And you do most of the eye rolling, I noticed. Yeah.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, you do most of the talking.
Yep.
So we have talked about this, and we've talked about having a different, theme for every episode. And you've been lovely in asking me, well, what are the sorts of things, or where should we go? And we've tossed around a few ideas about where we would start season 2. Yep. But inevitably, we come back to this whole idea of what's been, I guess, a major part of my research and what I've found, and that is this notion of having personal power as a small business owner, and how that kind of pervades everything. That's a big word, isn't it?
That's great.
It's
a very big word for you.
Pervades.
Yes.
Invades, that's perhaps better.
Yes.
How it's kind of actually affects everything that we do as small business owners.
Yep.
And I think this is a key thing. So you heard it here, hot off the press, not even in the thesis yet. This is a key theme. Is really getting a grasp on what power means.
Yeah, and for those small business people who have come here to listen or watch this, and the only thing you get out of this half an hour podcast is how important it is for you to recognise the value of having personal power in your small business. It will get you through. So that's what we're going to try and get across in the next few minutes, yeah?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. That's it, exactly. And I think the reason I started to sort of think about this, and this started to come up more regularly, maybe I should take a step back and explain what I've done for the last few years, and that is research small business owners. So I've actually gone out, I had 34 small business owners in a range of various industries that I went out and I did interviews with, quite long interviews. They were lovely people. They gave me their time and helped me incredibly. So I did a lot of interviews and then analysed everything that they had to say, coded everything that they had to say, and then looked for what are the themes that people are telling me. And really what I was wanting to know about is what are the things that go on for you at work as a business owner that might cause you some level of stress or anxiety, and what is it? And so it's been a really interesting journey because I'm a small business owner too.
Yeah. And you had some ideas going in that have been confirmed, but geez, you've learned a lot,
heaps,
a huge amount.
Heaps. Yeah. So asking these questions, what I found was, and for anyone out there that's actually, really into research, I'm doing grounded theory, which is actually the kind of approach that Brené Brown uses, in fact. So that's the closest I can come to the real world. Anyway, within this research, I was constantly questioning what small business owners would be telling me from time to time, because inevitably people will say, love being my own boss. Just absolutely love working for myself, love the freedom of it, can't imagine working for anybody else. And I think that's brilliant. And everyone, you could hear, the love in their voice when they talked about that.
Yeah, the freedom.
Yeah. But I kind of struggled with it, I have to confess. And the reason that I did that is because I've worked in small business mental health.
Yep, and it's not that free.
No, it's not that free.
No.
So when I look at the figures around how many small business owners are feeling stressed at the moment, how many are feeling anxious, and there's a lot of reports out there. Treasury have done reports, Xero have done reports, Commonwealth Bank have done reports. There's a lot of information that says a lot of small business owners have either gone through a huge amount of stress because of COVID, for example, and forced shutdowns, or they're experiencing stress and anxiety at the moment. So I just couldn't put the two together. Like, why is everyone telling me that being in small business is so fantastic? And then I read a report that says everyone's really stressed and anxious.
Yeah, and all the way to breakdowns, suicide.
Right. And exits out of business.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did that longitudinal study with the University of Newcastle and my supervisors, and we looked at the long-term effects of COVID and what we found in small business. And what we found was now more than ever, small business owners are talking much more actively about exiting businesses. I can't wait to retire to get out and close the doors.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in staying in any longer. Right? We're seeing more, and I'm not saying everyone, but we are seeing that more frequently. So I couldn't marry the two together. The freedom yet stress. So what does that actually mean? So when I dug a little bit deeper into that, there's quite a number of elements that equal a sense of freedom or power in a small business that I think we need to acknowledge, because if we can understand those elements, then perhaps we can enjoy the freedom in small business without the stress.
So the small business people told you what? What was it?
I'm so glad you asked, and I know we're only doing 30-minute episodes.
No,
thank goodness. Everyone's going, thank goodness.
That's all right. In a nutshell, what's your entire PhD about? 7 seconds, go.
You know this is how I put you to sleep at night, isn't it? You just ask me about my PhD and I give you an answer.
Insomnia, not a problem. No, not sleeping soundly. I ask a question at 11. Yep, and the sun comes up. Well, we're amusing each other. So, okay. So what did they tell you? What did they tell you?
Okay, so I guess it's really understanding. Okay, let me take a step back. We know if we look at employees in workplaces, right, which is where most of the research is done in this space, we know that for an employee to be happy at work, they need to have a few things. They need to feel like they're in control of their job. They've got a bit of a say in what they do and how they do it. They need to have good examples of leadership around them.
Yep.
So they need to have people that are really walking the talk and care about them and do all of those things. And then they also need a workplace that normalises discussions about mental health and self-care, where I'm feeling like it's okay to say, I need a mental health day today. You know, like it's okay to talk about mental health. So this is what we know about employees. But of course, you and I know, because we're small business people, that it's very different when you work for yourself. Like, if I want to have a mental health day, what do? Do I say to you, I'm going to have a mental health day? And can I afford to do that?
Yeah. Well, there's, I don't think there's sick pay for yourself.
That's
if you
right.
take a day
There
off.
isn't.
No. So, yeah. Okay. So
there's those things.
So it was autonomy, having control.
Right.
Having connection to others.
Yep.
And also normalising what it's like to be you with others.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's taking those ideas and saying, well, if I work for myself, and in fact we know, for example, 64% of all businesses in Australia don't have employees. We actually work alone.
Yeah.
So if I work for myself, how do I take what I might know that keeps me mentally healthy or feeling good at work and apply it to me?
If you don't mind, can you give me an idea of the one-person small business people that you did the interviews with? What sort of professions were they?
A range of professions.
Yeah.
So I had a number of people that were working in the arts, for example, so videographers, and I'm saying that and I'm kind of looking past the camera now at Jerry. So videographers and arts people. I had people who were in business consulting, doing business consulting. I had people who were doing graphic design.
Were there some tradies and
had a couple of tradies, had people that were working. Actually, it was quite varied, in fact. I think about 70% of all the businesses that I interviewed worked for themselves, so they worked alone, and the rest were what we would call micro business owners, which is they owned the business, but they had a couple of employees,
Right, so
but no more than 4.
So less than 5.
Less than 5.
Okay, so on their own or less than 5, and
Yep.
and across the board, hairdressers, tradies, plumbers,
Really varied.
consultants.
Consultants,
Okay.
yeah, you name it. It was quite varied. So it was
Yep.
very interesting, all different industries. So anyway, thanks for that, because now I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that was the point.
take a breath.
Yep.
So anyway, trying to marry these, 2 elements up together, and finding there's a number of things that affect that. And one of them is, if we know in, say, an employee workplace that control, having a say in what I do and how I do it, is important. Okay, so let's look at that from a small business owner perspective. Everyone telling me they love being their own boss and having control. I'm going, great, but you're still stressed, so what's going on? Yeah. So what I ended up doing was I would ask a question about that a little bit differently. So if I had somebody tell me that they love being their own boss and they could set their own hours, and they love the fact that they could walk their dog at midday when everyone else is at work, for example, they have that freedom. So the minute I would say, for example, well, that's terrific, but what happens if you're doing a job for a client and you walk your dog at midday every Wednesday at midday, and you've got a job that you've got to submit to a client that's due on the Friday, but then that client rings you and says, oh, Leanne, I need that job now on the Wednesday instead of on the Friday. Do you actually say to that client, I'm really sorry, but I'm out at midday, I can't do it?
Well, they're your bread and butter. So you're going to bend over backwards for clients.
Right.
They're going to come first.
Right. So then, and that was quite often the answer that these wonderful small business owners, micro business owners would tell me. They'd say, oh, no. If the client needs it, I'm just going to have to walk on another day.
Yeah.
Because I've got to do what the client says, because they are my bread and butter. I've got to pay my mortgage, I've got bills coming up, I've got all of that happening. And totally get it, I understand. But that comes back then to the question of, well, just how free are you?
Yeah. Well, if you left a job at 40 hours a week, how many of those small business people were honest about the hours they spent on their jobs?
Oh yeah, look, I can't remember the name of the woman, Laurie someone. Yeah. I put this up when I teach at the uni. I put this up in week 2 that says, I've left my 40-hour job working for someone else just so I could work 80 hours for myself.
Yeah. I know.
But anyway, look, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because what came out of the study that was really interesting was not everybody is stressed and anxious. So therefore the question is, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing differently?
Yeah. So the ones that aren't coping and it's not sustainable,
Exactly.
What are you doing to cope and to make it sustainable?
Yeah.
And what was the difference? Sorry, glad I asked.
Thanks for asking, John. Well, I think it comes down to this notion of what I wanted to talk about today, but I've talked too much, we're running out of time. Yeah. It comes down to this notion of power.
Yeah.
So what do I do to feel powerful within myself to be able to, if a client, for example, said to me, I need to move that deadline to Wednesday, I know we agreed Friday, to be able to say to that client, I'm sorry, but I can't accommodate that at the moment.
How do you do that?
How do you do that without being stressed and worried that I'm going to offend them, I'm going to lose them?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage if I do that.
Yeah. How do you get that power?
Very good question. And you're going to ask the alternate question. I already know because I walk with you every day. What is it?
Why are you feeling so powerless in this situation?
Why are you feeling so powerless?
Yeah.
Why are you feeling so powerless? And so really, I guess, it's this notion of power and all the things that feed into us feeling powerful that I'd like to kind of explore over this season, really. And that comes back to our walk.
Yep.
Looking at all the topics.
Yep.
What are we going to do? And realising that we really can't do any topic until we talk about power.
Yeah.
And how I feel. Do I feel powerful? As a small business owner.
All right. So if you consider the time, and we will, this will be weaved into our podcast in this season about power, because it is the number one. Yeah.
It is the number one.
Okay. So what can you give these wonderful people now in the 60 seconds we got left?
Yep.
A strategy or a tactic or a way of thinking, just as a a first step, if you like, or something they can try?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that I would advise is subscribe.
We're not going to give it all out in one go. We're going to go dribs and drabs to keep you close. But yes, stay close to us, and you'll get more and more bits of wisdom.
Yes.
Coming from your research each week. Yeah.
And the reason that I think this is interesting to explore is because I don't actually think that we think of mental health in small business and power together at the same time. I think too often we tend to think of power as something dirty. You know, who was the guy that was like, Dr. Evil?
Yep. Yeah.
Or Gordon Gecko, you know, where greed is good and that kind. We have a bad light on it, but in fact, it's got a bad rap. I think if we understand our position in small business and whether or not we feel powerful and what are the things I can do that will make me feel powerful, we actually are likely to be much less stressed and anxious if we are ever stressed and anxious. And not everyone is all the time. It comes and goes, which is great. That's called mental health. Like we all have good days and bad days, don't we?
We
right?
do.
We all have ebbs and flows.
Yep, we're human.
Right. But if we're able to say, hang on a sec, what's going on for me right now? Why don't I feel powerful? And then look at all the elements that might contribute to that. And that's the sort of thing that I want to explore.
Okay, so that first tactical strategy, if you like, is mindfulness. And that is to witness you feeling it and say, what's happening with me now? That's like the first step in this process, to recognise that you're not feeling settled, that you're stressed, and to look at yourself and go, okay, what's happening for me now? I'm just going to take a step back. And we call that the gap, right?
Yeah, we do. We call it the gap.
Okay.
And it's in season 1.
It is in season 1.
And what episode is it in season 1?
It's number... It's in episode 1. So, season 1, episode... And it's around the gap. Yes?
The gap, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to leave these people now? Okay, so just to summarise, if you like, huge amounts of information, huge amounts of research, and the results that have come from that to help small business people survive being in small business. And Leanne's worked out from all of these thousands of hours that you having power.
Yeah, personal power.
Personal power is the key to your survival. And the first step in that is to recognise when you're feeling powerless. Yeah?
Yeah, that's it.
Cool.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for your time today. Hope you got some great takeaways from our chats. If you'd like to know more about John and his counselling, go to johndiamond.com.au. If you'd like to know a bit more about Leanne and the work she does in the mental health of small business owners, go to fortitudeatwork.com.au. Don't forget, check the show notes for any additional information about support and resources specifically for small business owners.